Hello, good evening. Welcome back to to meeting of New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association. Today is May 14th, Tuesday, 2024, and we have lots of things that we would like to share with you. So let's get started. If you would like to get at your pace, move the slides at your pace, please scan the QR code, and this will give you access to the presentation deck. In today's agenda, we have, we would like to welcome new members and thanks everyone who renewed their membership at New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association. We would like to say that we have a first car dealer sponsor aboard. And we want to celebrate electric vehicle advocates for successful Drive Electric Earth Month campaign this year. And then we will switch gears, and Ashley Lynn is going to talk about EV battery recycling, our main presentation. And then we'll have some reminders about upcoming presentations, upcoming events. For those of you who are new, I would like to mention a little bit about Electric Vehicle Association. Our mission is to educate and advocate for the rapid adoption of electric vehicles. We are one of the many chapters of the National Electric Vehicle Association, which was formerly Electric Auto Association. And this is North America's largest nonprofit that accelerates the adoption of electric vehicles. Again, we have about 100 chapters, and there are thousands of members, about 25,000 subscribers. And we educate in our communities about the benefits of driving electric, and we educate from our own experience. We are involved in countless initiatives and projects throughout the US, and our national team coordinates and amplifies many of them for the public to see and experience. The website is the national website. Our website is jerseyeva.org. For the membership updates, we would like to welcome new members, Michael Moy and Ken Hunold. Both of them are very actively involved in electric vehicle shows. This spring, Michael Moy drives Lucid Air. Kenneth Hunold drives Chevy Bolt EUV. We also would like to thank those who renewed their membership, and those people are Michael Apple, Sam Tigan, Romy Vreeland, Kevin Chavous, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, Pam Frank. Pam Frank is CEO of Charge EVC. Thank you, Pamela. And Anthony Asuncion, our student member. We would like to also share with you our sponsorship options, because New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association offers multiple levels of annual sponsorship. We have level 1, we have level 2, and we have DC fast charging. For level 1, it includes displaying your material at our table, notice of new events on our calendar, mention and acknowledgement during our meetings and events, logo on our website, logo at the bottom of newsletter. For the level 2 charge sponsor, in addition to the level 1, you also get article posted on New Jersey EVA website. You get presentation during our meeting, about 30 minutes. And also we will have a t-shirt, and the t-shirt will have logo on the back of it. Also logo on the backdrop, logo on New Jersey EVA printed materials, and mention of new products, service offerings in our newsletter once every 6 months. For the DC fast charging level, in addition to the previously mentioned benefits, we also offer a feature article on New Jersey EVA monthly newsletter, management of one ride and drive event per year on your site. We also mention of new products and service offerings in our newsletter once every 3 months. And we offer prominent location of banners, t-shirts, and in our newsletter. So our first sponsor is Ciocca Chevrolet of Princeton. We would like to welcome them and thank them for their sponsorship. This is a screenshot from the website, and you can tell that they do sell electric vehicles, and most specifically, they do have Blazer EV, and they offer a lease with $2,990 down for $429 a month for 36 months. So this is the website, and we would like to thank them very, very much for their support. Now we would like to switch gears about a report on the recent Drive Electric Earth Months. Drive Electric Earth Months was previously marketed as Drive Electric Earth Day. However, it has always been for the entire month of April. So hence the rebranding, then now it is Drive Electric Earth Month. And just like in prior years, we had lots of events. We started in Overpeck Park in Leonia, where the leader, the captain, was Dennis Burzan. We partnered with North New Jersey Chamber of Commerce and Easy Ride, and we brought lots of vehicles. Then on Wednesday, April 17th, Mario Caballero organized EV show in his workplace at Bridgewater Crossing. We also had, during this event, we have test drives of some selected vehicles. Then on Friday, April 19th, we had our EV show as part of Earth Day at Canal Walk in Somerset. That was myself, and we had a very nice selection of electric vehicles. We did not have a test drive at that time, but it was a good event. Everywhere you see highlighted, it means that if I click on it, it will go to the photo album. So I will not go into those photo albums because it is lots of pictures. On Saturday, April 20th, we had 3 events, and there was actually another one that was organized by Sierra Club. So those were Green Fair in Somerville. Captain was Jeff Lamburn, and I was there. Essex Environmental Center, captain was Dennis Burzan. At Pleasant Beach was Alex Brown. And on Sunday, April 21st, we had EV show at East Hampton, and that was organized by Patrick McDevitt. The next weekend, on Saturday, we had Madison EV Expo, which is annual show organized by Peter Fried. Sunday, April 28th, we had Trailside Nature and Science Center, Mountainside. We had EV show that was part of Earth Fest Festival. The captain was Michael Apple. On Monday, April 29th, we had presentation. Unlike the pandemic style virtual presentation, this one was in-person presentation. And it was named Electric Vehicles, the Good and the Ugly. It was in Somerset in Municipal Complex. And it was presented by Mario Caballero and Ashley Lynn Kwa. Then the same week on Friday, we participated in Sustainable Jersey Summit. We did not have a personal vehicle show, but we organized medium and heavy duty electric vehicles show. And it was very interesting. We had front loader, heavy. We had Bollinger truck, which is class 6. We had school bus from BYD, which was very unique design, completely different look. We had Tropos Motors. These are trucks that are low speed vehicles, and we had 2 models on display. One was a box truck, one was bed truck. We also had lots of lawn care equipment. I can't even recall it. Green Mean and other brands. We had obviously a pickup truck. We had a Ford F-150 Lightning, and since we were at this DEP also displayed the vehicles that they came in, which is Chrysler Pacifica e-Hybrid and Chevy Bolt. And the EP organized very nice, very successful test driving event, ride and drive. And they do take credit for that, yeah. So 2 days later, on Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, we had Earth Day Fair in Highland Park. It was partially rainy, so it was a little bit hard, but we had BMW on display. They are our potential sponsor. And most recent event was in Lawrence. It was a bike rodeo and EV show. That was organized, captained by Mike Hornsby. So now we are going to switch gears to battery recycling, and Ashley Lynn will take it from here. Ashley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Lynn. If you don't know who I am, I'm the policy lead here for the New Jersey Electric Vehicle Association. So to give a bit of background, I think a lot of people, when they have started their journey in driving an electric vehicle, a very prevalent question that usually comes up is, if you're driving an electric vehicle, what happens at end of life? What about when you need to scrap the battery? Are you now polluting the environment more because you are burying them in a landfill? What happens? And I think that there is a massive issue associated with thinking that there needs to be all of these different questions that you need to kind of leapfrog over. Stan, do you want me to share the presentation, or are you able to continue sharing the screen?
I was just concerned about the blue box. I mean, the box. I don't know whether everybody has seen it, but I've seen a frame and I figured it out. Okay.
Oh, not a problem. Great.
Okay.
If you can switch to the next slide for me then.
Yeah.
So when we're kind of getting into electric vehicles and we're talking about end of the road, basically, for batteries, and we're talking about the battery pack, I think that it's important to remember that end of the road for batteries is really when an electric vehicle battery pack reaches about 70 to 75% battery capacity. And in order for it to actually reach that point, we really need to think about the fact that batteries will really only have degradation of about 1 to 2% every single year. And that's really predicated upon how well you treat your vehicle. Now, in years past, you didn't have thermal conditioning. We didn't have all of these different types of technologies, which were allowing us to treat our batteries better. And because of that, we had a lot worse degradation. And you may not have something that could last as long as they do now. But you're traditionally seeing something that's in the realm of 1 to 2%. And when you think of something like your phone, where we keep them plugged in on a very regular basis, and most people keep them plugged in all night, you have battery degradation that's honestly pretty severe. And people think that they have to switch out their batteries pretty regularly. And so when people think of battery degradation, they almost attribute it to the same way that they do their cell phones. But batteries for electric vehicles are actually vastly different, because it is only 1 to 2%. And not in the realm of 5 to almost 7% annually like you would for a cell phone. And because of that, hitting this mark may actually take almost 10 years before you actually have 70 to 75% of the original capacity that was rated for that battery when it was released by a manufacturer. And so if you're talking about what is the end of the road for a battery and when do you hit that, that's not until well down the road at 10 years. And for most people, it's far beyond that. You're not actually seeing that until much later. So 10 years is something as if you're treating your battery very poorly. There's very minimal thermal conditioning. And if you are very rough with that battery and you're using old technology and you're seeing things that are like the old school 2011 Nissan Leaf, not the technology that we're seeing today. So when I'm talking about that for that 10-year mark, it's really for these older vehicles. For the newer technology, we don't even have projections for that just yet, because of the fact that those vehicles are going to be driving for a very long time. So if we were to do a quick back of the envelope estimation, do some quick math and say, okay, if I'm going to recycle about 100 electric vehicle battery packs and see what I can actually pull out of them, what does that really look like? The surprising statistic is that you can actually recycle about 95% of the minerals inside of an electric vehicle battery pack and make those into new batteries. So if I have 85 battery packs, you can refurbish and repurpose about 85. So 85% is going to be sent for second use. And that becomes energy storage. So that can become a power wall for somebody's home. That could be commercial or industrial use for large warehouses. Think Amazon, think United States Postal Service, think battery backups for these large facilities that in black sky conditions, when the grid goes down and you need these facilities to continue running because they provide a variable service that they need to do something for the public, they can still run. Or even for utility use. If the utility themselves wants to install them somewhere important, you can actually use these as energy storage. Or for 15%, where you actually say, you know what, they don't actually have a state of charge. They can't actually hold anything. We don't think that they can be used for energy storage. 15% of them will be actually sent on for recycling purposes and will be sent for processing. And so because they can't actually hold a charge, the cycling doesn't actually work very well on those batteries anymore. Those batteries would be collected, processed, recycled, and then 95% of those minerals in the battery would be pulled out and produced into new batteries. So what does that really look like, and how does that process really translate? And a lot of people think of it as this massive stream that takes so much into it. But in reality, it's kind of I guess you could say, flow chart that when you break it down, it's not all that different from what we think about in our traditional battery sets. Hey, Stan, if you could hit that slide for me. So when you really break it down into battery recycling, it really starts from the collection process. And this is honestly where most people have the most difficulty when they're thinking about electric vehicles and batteries. It is actually not you take batteries from someone's vehicle and they get thrown to a landfill. And actually at the Franklin Electric Vehicle Commission presentation, Mario had a really great anecdote about the fact that seeing is believing. And unless you actually do the research yourself and ask questions, you won't actually know. And he talked about the fact that he called up junkyards and he tried to figure out if there are electric vehicle batteries sitting in junkyards and were waiting to get sent to landfills and buried, and they weren't. If anything, they were actually being processed and either picked up by the manufacturer and sent back, or the fact that you can actually purchase them from a junkyard because they're actually worth money. So in reality, the collection process is vastly different than what people think. So when we talk about electric vehicle batteries, you actually have these two value streams where you're actually getting electric vehicle batteries or actually consumer electronics and other stationary energy storage batteries, and they're all processed pretty much the same way. And when you do, you're actually trying to figure out what you can separate them into categorically. So when you process them, you actually have all of these different things after they come out of the shredding process. And the first one is black mass, which is this granular material that's made up of shredded cathodes and anodes and batteries. And this is actually pretty heavily regulated over in the European Union. You have copper and aluminum foils, which hold the anode and cathode material, so those two ends. And then you have separators, those thin plastic films. You have other plastics, and then you have steel canisters, and then you have electrolytes. These are all shredded, put into different categories, and then you figure out what you can actually use thereafter. So the aluminum, the copper, the plastics, these are all shredded out and separated. And the scrap from battery production facilities accounts for a lot of the material that's processed by battery recyclers today. And end-of-life batteries won't actually become a major source of recycled material until after 2030, just because of the fact that we're not actually seeing a lot get recycled at present. So much is actually still being used in the actual energy storage realm. But at present, battery recyclers in North America are in fact trying to scale up so that way they are ready for when the recycling does hit that tipping point, and we need to understand what that is going to look like. But there are a couple of different entities that are estimating that if we really start to ramp up the lithium-ion battery recycling facilities in the United States, to kind of combat what's going on in the European Union, since a lot of them are really trying to get onto the technology and get onto that stream. We currently process about 100,000 tons of material every year, and companies that are announcing plans, especially because of the funding, which I'll talk about in a moment, they're capable of processing more than 650,000 tons per year by the end of the decade. So that's scaling up by a factor of about 6.5 times to really reach this need that we're seeing. So if the European Union has gone further and they're establishing these battery regulations to apply, and a lot of these were starting back in February, the regulations are going to be phasing in a lot of mandatory targets for the recycling and the reuse of this material. And the battery materials that we're seeing are kind of getting, I guess you could say, percolated into end of life use for batteries, and they're ensuring compliance. That is actually going to be hitting multiple manufacturers. So it's not just going to hit the European Union, it's also going to hit the United States. So we're going to see a lot of these foreign manufacturers actually make sure that this is a requirement that's going to filter through a lot of the different processing. So without going into the crazy chemistry of how does hydrometallurgical processing work and what does pyrometallurgical processing look like, the basis of it is that when you start to pull everything apart and what do the processes look like, you're actually starting to see that we're going to start scaling this up at a vastly faster pace, simply because other countries and other areas are really leaning into the compliance factor of all of this. All right, next slide for me. So if we're building on this foundation of research and we're really saying, all right, what does the industry look like and what is this next step? We can kind of back up a moment to post-pandemic to what was the administration doing and how are they kind of putting their money where their mouth is, literally and figuratively. And that starts in November of 2022 when the US DOE released about $74 million, and they were trying to target second use scaling up demonstrations that integrated the end of life electric vehicle batteries into these secondary applications. So we're now talking about, can I take electric vehicle batteries and actually make them into power walls? Can I make them into specific demonstrations that show it's not just a battery that has 40% state of charge that it can hold? It can do much more than that. Can it still cycle? Does it have the capacity to balance load? Can it do something for a particular application? And so a lot of these projects we're trying to figure out, can you reintegrate lithium ion battery materials into a particular project, particularly for renewables? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes. Yes, it can. And so it was responsible for sustaining both end-of-life recycling, but also figuring out, can you actually do secondary applications in energy storage? And so the product was that they wanted to make sure that you could strengthen domestic battery recycling so we are ready for 2030, while simultaneously making sure that we're not so dependent on foreign materials. And they were trying to supercharge our domestic manufacturing because they recognized that with all things that come in the future, we want to make sure that we're not so heavily reliant on foreign jobs that are producing all of the materials, but we can also embolden our own workforce to be able to be prepared for what's coming next. All right, next slide. So then what happened next? What's kind of going through the process after you finish a 24-month pilot that says, yes, it is in fact possible to use electric vehicle batteries for all of these other processes. What actually is feasible now moving forward? And it was $62 million of additional funding from the US DOE that was bucketed into these three overarching topic areas. And when this FOA, this funding announcement, dropped, it was expanding participation in consumer electronics recycling, which when you think about it, is not necessarily geared towards electric vehicles, but still pretty important because we were talking about collection of end-of-life consumer electronics. So really making sure that the standalone batteries that we have don't just get tossed in the trash, but actually go into these different streams. So that way the waste streams aren't getting overburdened and the battery recycling plants that we have are getting better at doing what they do. But also making sure that if we're improving the economics of recycling these consumer electronics, that we are actually having better market demand for recycling them. So if you're having innovative cost-saving approaches to pre-processing and sorting through these things, you are now having this intelligent automated sorting process that is making us better at doing what we're doing. So this is cell phone batteries. This is anything that's coming out of your laptops. This is everything that's kind of leading up to the electric vehicle battery. Because again, if it's not coming out of a vehicle because they're still on the road, they're going to be around for a very long time. How do we prepare ourselves to kind of have this economies of scale? So when we do have a lot of vehicles coming off the road and they're not being used for energy storage, we actually are prepared to say, I'm going to process over 160 or 620 or 750 tons, 1,000 tons of processed material every single year here in the United States, rather than having to figure out if the European Union can do it better than me. So that's why they also have all of these different programs that are kind of gearing it up in these smaller steps. And then the very last one, which was, how are we implementing projects that will assist states and local governments in doing better battery collection and recycling and reprocessing? And it's this very last one that a lot of people were interested in, strangely enough, because even though it had the least amount of funding, is that in this smaller bucket, it actually was the most highly contested one because they had the most applications that went in for it. Because when you think about it, municipalities, states, all of these local entities don't actually have really good processes for people to drop off their items. Most people think, I need to recycle my batteries. I think I'll probably go to Staples, or they went to the old Home Depot, Office Depot, but their homes don't really have the, I guess you could say, collection boxes or otherwise they could just take to their local municipality. It's not the first place they think of when they think, I want to recycle my batteries. And if anything, I have a small bucket of batteries downstairs, and I don't think I'm going to go to my Edison municipal location and try to recycle. It's not the first place that I think of either. And I think having these collection programs get scaled up and have a better, more streamlined waste stream of understanding how do we do this better, more efficiently, and having these deployed assets go out so that way drop-off programs are better. This is what this entire funding stream was about for this particular program. Because as we're thinking about it, lithium-ion EV battery packs are in fact just the same as these smaller consumer electronics. And as we start to leverage technology and reuse what we already have, it's incredibly important. So to kind of get off of the how are we recycling and what does this look like, we're not going to go into the actual case studies and conceptualization of what does the actual energy storage look like when you take the electric vehicle battery pack out of the electric vehicle. One more slide for me. So when we're talking about the second life of electric vehicle batteries, we can talk about community energy storage systems. So this is a project that I actually really love. It's from the Oak Ridge National Lab, General Motors, and ABB. And there's a small graphic on the right-hand side that I can honestly probably make bigger and send to people in the future. But the idea was that you had a small community and every pocket of about 3 to 5 homes was all connected. And you actually had electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles that were able to charge off of their homes as usual. You had bidirectional meters, and these smart meters, I love the fact that they had bidirectional smart meters installed as part of this process, were able to measure a whole lot as part of this. And what they were doing was using solar storage and electric vehicle charging to make sure that they were understanding the nuances of this entire project. And by doing this, they were able to figure out that it wasn't just important for you to manage charging of the when and the how much. It was also important for them to understand if I'm using intermittent renewables of solar or wind, can I also make sure that I'm using batteries that are coming out of electric vehicles to capture that. And so they were actually using a variety of different battery packs, but the battery packs that they were using were generally the same kind, and they were usually around the same state of charge. It was usually things that had been decommissioned around the same time. And so it wasn't necessarily the most, I guess you could say, innovative or cutting edge thing, because you weren't starting to blend technologies or things that had been taken offline, which is why the Ally Max BESS system, which is a 300 kilowatt hour system, it integrated battery cells with diverse chemistries. Also, it varied the voltage ranges and they had different capacities, and they also had varying states of health. So this is something that's now having to think a whole lot more. So it's saying these are all different types of chemistries. They all came to me with different states of health, and they all have different capacities. So this might be an 88 kilowatt hour battery. This may be something else that's only a 60. Maybe this is something that's only a 40. And all of them are vastly different. How am I going to think for all of these different batteries that are all connected to each other as one giant 300 kilowatt hour system? And it connected all of these together into one holistic approach to figure out how we're going to balance this entire system. And it worked, and it's still working. And I really love this system because it also kind of was the predecessor to the Moab energy storage system at UC San Diego Library Annex, where they did something similar, where they had repurposed electric vehicle battery packs from different manufacturers all in one repurposed system. And so UC San Diego is expect to continue using this system, and they're going to start storing more solar energy from a 200 kilowatt rooftop solar array, and they're continuously reducing their demand. And this is a pretty impressive thing because out in California, as you know, if you are continuously trying to make sure that you are not spiking the grid, but you have peak conditions and everybody is running electric at the same time that somebody is using air conditioning over here and a lab is trying to do this and this is happening over here, having a library run off of an energy storage asset is probably a lot better than potentially causing a brownout. So it's honestly pretty great because now they're avoiding peak electricity rates and vastly reducing their potential demand charges as a result of this. So it's been a really interesting way that people are kind of leveraging all of the options associated with, I guess you could say, the second life of electric vehicle batteries. And so Synectic and Ally are trying to repurpose over 4,000 electric vehicle battery packs over the next 5 years, which is a lot. 4,000 electric vehicle battery packs to collect sounds like a high number, but in reality, you can probably get more than that in a shorter period of time. But they're estimating that they can save about 28,000 tons of carbon dioxide by doing that. And so there's a whole lot of projects that are going to be arising over the next years as we start looking into the second life of battery packs. And so it'll most likely be a lot of projects just like this. We are not actually seeing things go directly to the actual recycling plant, but you'll be starting to see the second life happening more often than not. And it'll be that 85% that are being repurposed for energy storage, and then that 15% that's being recycled. And as we start to hit the tipping point of things not being able to hold a charge and that state of charge and the state of health not being great, then it's going to start to make that dovetail and you'll start to see things actually get recycled. But even then, the recycling is still going to be incredibly effective at 95% plus, and then it's going to be repurposed into another battery pack. It's not going to be something that's thrown into a landfill, unable to be repurposed and reused. And we're going to be seeing better technologies that keep getting used over and over again. So if anything, I'm very excited to see the new things that are coming out, especially as we're seeing in uptakes in solid state batteries and everything else that is going out in energy storage. So that is the all-encompassing presentation that I have for you folks today on kind of what's coming next in batteries and what's going on. So if anybody says we're burying batteries the same way we bury nuclear, we're not. We're not just tossing them in the trash. And we have a whole lot that's coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years. And I follow grant funding pretty closely. So I'm happy to take questions now. Feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute. But I'm happy to, answer questions before we hit into the reminders.
Ashley, thank you so much. This was awesome presentation. And it also reminded me my tenure in TerraCycle when I was exposed to how recycling system works. And essentially you hit the nail that recycling is only as good as the collection. So if we put our consumer electronic batteries into regular trash, they will never get recycled. And by the way, it is a very bad idea to do it because it could cause a fire.
Yeah.
Also, I want to remind everyone that conventional vehicles get recycled as well. They get recycled for metal. Obviously, you get steel, you get aluminum, even copper from the electronics and conduits is recycled from conventional vehicles, and even some plastics and rubber. So I've heard that about 80% is actually recycled. Also very important to mention is that the lead acid starter batteries, they have over 95% recycling rate. And that's our benchmark, right? Because you do not take the lead acid battery and toss it separately. You essentially dispose of it with the vehicle when you put it into junkyard, and the junkyard will take care of the recycling. So I wanted to make that comment. Before we allow other audience to ask, I have one more question. It's a kind of teaser question. Have you seen any application of lithium-ion batteries where they get used once and then tossed?
Used and then tossed. In what capacity? Like they're being used as energy storage or?
Yes. Well, in appliance or equipment of some sort. I'm essentially referring to what we hear in news about the wars and things like that, drones, right?
Only if items are scrapped or damaged beyond repair. So it's only
Okay.
in instances where you have military applications where
Yes.
things are generally left behind in military applications where it is more expensive to, if it is an asset that is kept by the military and it is more expensive to ship it home and pay for the fuel, they leave it behind. They do that a
No.
lot, where it's more expensive to physically ship anything home than to just leave it behind and just damage and destroy it and get rid of it. That is very prevalent
Uh,
overseas. Or if something is damaged and it's a US asset here on US soil and we use it once and it is in some type of accident, planes are an example of that. We can't really, or ships, other types of technologies where it's in an accident and we can't really recycle something because it is damaged beyond repair and there's no guarantee that we don't have contamination because things have touched each other and we don't know what chain things have been through and we don't have, I guess you could say, an
I
understanding of where it's been. We
actually,
can't
yeah,
recycle
I
it.
was referring
Really only
to
two
those drones that are used as a weapons because they use lithium-ion battery to propel them to the target, and those batteries get used only once. And,
Mm.
and this is something that is sad. I don't know what is the percentage overall, how much lithium batteries are used for single purpose like that. But I think it's more of a outlier because it doesn't really fit into the story that we are trying to say. But for those who are concerned about the lithium ion batteries not being recycled, that's the only case. When you have drones that carry weapons, that's
Yeah, I'd
the
say it's
only
military
case.
applications and accidents are the only two cases that we're
Yeah.
not seeing
Mm.
recyclable material. Otherwise, it's a very high
Yeah.
access point where people are seeing it.
Okay, audience, go ahead. Questions?
See, we have a hand raised. Go for it.
Hi, thanks for this presentation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I saw a presentation all about like, problems with extracting lithium from communities and stuff. And in it, they were mentioning that most lithium is not recycled right now because it's cheaper to just mine for virgin lithium. So I'm wondering, number one, is that true? And number two, is there anything we can do as consumers to kind of ensure that the lithium get like I'm thinking, yeah, it's going to be a while before the batteries in my car need to be replaced, but like what about like, lithium AA batteries, and stuff like that, Is there anything I can do to ensure that they get recycled? Like could I pay somebody and to take them and make sure that they will be recycled?
So, Stan, if you can go back like 2 slides to the slide that's for November 22 with the funding. Yeah,
This
thank you.
one?
So to answer your first question, because this is kind of like a two-parter, the answer is halfway, yes. It is at this present moment cheaper for you to actually mine for fresh, raw materials than it is for you to recycle. It is inherently more expensive to recycle, surely due to the fact that you have to do more labor and a more intensive process for you to recycle. And that is exactly why 74 million was funding this process. Only due to the fact that if you think about it, you have to take an entire process in order to go into a battery, figure out what the state of charge is, whether or not it is viable for second life, do an entire, I guess you could say, assessment of it, and then redistribute it and ship it somewhere. If it is viable, they ship it elsewhere. If it's not viable, you're able to then recycle it. You then have to completely drain that battery so that way there is not a single drop of anything inside of it from an energy standpoint. And then from there, when it has zero state of charge, you are then able to take it apart, shred it, put it into all of those different categories, and then go through that process. So that is a very labor intensive process, and that is a very manufacturing, from that standpoint, intensive process. And then you now need to process all of those different things because black mass is very heavily regulated in most places. it's incredibly detrimental from a, I guess you could say, capital standpoint for people to try to say, I'm going to do battery manufacturing. That's going to make me money. No, it's not. Battery manufacturing is not going to make you money. And that is precisely why the DOE needed to back it. Because if you're trying to figure out what this looks like from a domestic standpoint, that is inherently why we are trying to make sure we have more on US soil, because it's all being done overseas. We can't ship all of our batteries overseas to have somebody else do it. We need to scale it up here, because that also helps us to have independence from other entities trying to do this faster and better than we do it. And if we also don't know how to do this process better, more efficiently, and with economies of scale, it's inherently going to be more expensive. Whereas if I have to pay somebody pennies because we're now basically ravaging, the Democratic Republic of the Congo for a specific type of mineral, or if I'm going into a, disadvantaged nation and saying, I'm going to be mining here and I need to pay you 15 cents for every 3 ounces of this particular mineral, then that's not really all that expensive for me. Blockchain technology can't necessarily track to make sure that people aren't using slave labor. And there's a lot of ethical concerns associated with where you get minerals from. We don't always have that on everything. And while there are now considerations on the government saying you have to have X amount of minerals from a country that does not use slave labor, you need to track where it comes from. You need to know who it comes from. You have to make sure that it's coming from viable places with ethical considerations, and you have to build things a proper way. That's not always the case. And that's also why we have these ramping up standards from now until 2030. And there's a reason for that. So it's cheaper now, but only for so long until we start to ramp up and have more compliance associated with it. And that's exactly why they're backing battery recycling. And then part 2 is you don't have to pay anybody to ensure that your stuff is being recycled, and make sure if anybody says, I need you to pay me to make sure that my stuff is recycled, it's a scam. Don't pay nobody. You should never have to pay anybody to have your stuff recycled. Many places, like your local Staples, like your local Office Depot, most places will in fact take your local batteries, your technology, your devices, everything, and they will take them for free. You don't have to do anything. I took a giant cart full of old devices into my local Office Depot, my, Staples. I wheeled it right in and I said, I need to recycle this. And they said, great. And they took it, and it was a recyclable series of goods, and they took it, and it's for free. You don't have to pay anybody. So there's nothing that you have to do in order to ensure that that process happens. Most recycling programs are just an existing thing that occurs.
You can also check with your county. I'm in Somerset County, and they do recycling of these special materials once, I don't know whether it's once a month or once every 3 months. I would say it's still easier to bring it to Home Depot,
Yeah.
but
E-waste recycling things happen on a regular basis for most municipalities and counties. You'll have to check your local calendar, the cool ones that come out that have all of the days for your chemicals, for your aerosols, for your batteries, for everything like that. They'll have them so that way they're like, please don't pour turpentine down your drain. Please bring it to us. Give us your prescription medications you no longer use. They'll have specific days for all of that for you to bring it in. It'll be like medications on this day, aerosols for this day, batteries for this day, and other e-waste. It'll be specific days, and it'll be listed on a calendar. You can bring them in on that day. Like I have one at Lake Papiani that just happened the other day here in Edison, and it was for the municipality of Edison. So it just depends upon your area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to help. David, you have a question?
Yeah, hi Ash, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, good to see you. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yeah.
Just had a question regarding your first statistic. I think you said about 70 to 75% when the battery gets around there, we're looking at maybe repurposing and or recycling. I'm curious about that. Again, the first generation Leafs, you see a lot of them on the road now for sale that, are below 50% still being used in some cases. So is that really more towards the next generation of vehicles? And is it because like the length of how you anticipate you're using the car, for 10, 20, 30 years will be at 70%, or what is that based on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So it's predominantly the fact that when we're talking about energy storage, and we're talking about state of charge, there are some entities that once a battery is below 75%, it actually puts it into an interesting market where if you own an electric vehicle and it's somewhere between 50 and 75, you can actually sell it to these third parties where they'll actually buy it from you. And you sometimes get more for it than if you were to sell it in a private sale for like, Kelly Blue Book tells me that my vehicle is worth X. This guy actually wants to buy my battery because it's worth more as a battery itself, as an asset, than as a car, which is a very strange and weird concept to think about. Only to the fact that if you have a very large battery, that's where it's coming from. Because if I have an old school Tesla, or if I have a very large battery that is, made to propel a large SUV, that is where it's coming from. So in this new generation where we have much larger batteries that are meant to propel much heavier vehicles, or if I'm talking about the new Rivians that are coming out, and those are meant to really be pretty healthy altogether. 75% is going to be that very interesting range where anything below 75%, people are just going to pay you for the battery. They don't even want the car around it. They don't care about the chassis. And if you've cracked up the outside of your car, ruined the interior, or somebody destroyed your seats, you could just start thinking about the secondary market and be like, I just want to sell my battery. Who wants to buy it? And somebody will. So that's where that statistic really comes from.
Great. Okay. So it's based on economics, and that makes sense. And that could change over time, obviously, as the economics of
For sure,
batteries
yeah.
change.
It's a market just like
Yeah.
anything else, where it may go down and it might just be like, all right, in the future, 55% is going to be that threshold that nobody really wants it until it's below 55%, because the energy storage systems are going to be able to manage anything that's between 20 and 55, and they'll be able to leverage that in the future, and they really don't care. But it's an interesting concept now that we're seeing in the markets.
Good to know. Actually, my friend just the other day, he has an old Leaf, and it goes like 20 miles, 25 miles, and it just got in an accident. So I think he's going to be done with it. So I'll let him know. Maybe he can sell his battery and get more for that than the car.
He might, yeah, honestly. Does anybody else have questions?
We have something in chat. Vanessa couldn't hear a question. I don't know what question it was.
I think that might have been when Peregrine was talking.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I had to reconnect. Very, very good presentation. Thank you. I was able to reconnect. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. We traded in one smart car for another. So we had a 2011 or 2013 rather, which is 11 years old, over 66,000 miles. The battery capacity, what we would get out of the battery was as good or better than when it was new. So the thermal management really makes a difference. And my heart broke because I'm looking at trading in this vehicle for
And it was just the air conditioner
nothing.
that was broken on that thing, yeah.
It's a power wall sitting in my driveway, but I just really don't know how to repurpose it for my use to make a power wall out of it. But it's a 17 kilowatt battery that's in perfect shape.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there. And that's the most diminutive battery. The only thing smaller is maybe in a hybrid vehicle. Even the fellow with the Nissan Leaf battery, if he's lost 50% capacity, 60% capacity, he's still got 17 kilowatts or more. He's got a power wall sitting in his driveway. Literally,
If you
that's
go on
what that
Amazon
battery
right now and you look up a Jackery box, which most
Mhm.
people want to power their laptop, to power their camping equipment or something else, 300 watts, not kilowatts, watts. It's
Right.
hundreds of dollars
Yeah.
for 300 watts. It's ridiculous. And that's how much batteries are right now for commercial purposes, little and residential purposes. And you have a 17 kilowatt hour battery.
Correct.
So if you
That's
think
what I'm
about
saying.
that in purposes of how much they would probably pay you for that, it's probably in the realm of a couple $1,000s for them to be able to repurpose that. So that secondary market kicks in, and that's why when you were telling me about that story the other day of the fact that they were going to give you $1,000, I think, for that,
Yeah.
2013 smart car, it broke my heart a little bit, because $1,000 is not what that vehicle is worth. Probably going to
broke
send it
my-
back to insurance scrap it.
broke my heart too, because the battery, the rest of the car is garbage. as far as we're concerned. The battery is gold. It's literally
And
worth
Dennis, and you
worth
should
it.
mention what was the primary reason why you had to.
Oh, the air conditioning crapped out for the third time. The first time was repaired under warranty. The second time was repaired out of my wallet. The third time I was not going to spend the money. In between, the seats are wearing out. The fabric on one of the seats is wearing. The airbag light came on, and I know there's a known problem with it. There's a connector under the seats, but I wasn't going to take the seats out and start playing with the wires. It was just too many things to do. And the traction control light came on and wouldn't go off because I had the front end repaired. The pothole a couple of years ago, pothole ate the front end. So I had to replace the steering rack, not whack, steering rack, and the uh, suspension tower had to be reattached. It was a mess. They did all the mechanical work, they fixed it, but they couldn't get the light to go off, and that was the dealership. They didn't know how to get the light to go off, and they have the computer, and I have nobody else with that Mercedes computer that could reprogram it to set it to 0 so that the light would go off. It was
Dennis,
absolutely crazy.
Dennis, so do you still hold on to the vehicle, or you traded in?
I traded it in.
So you don't have it,
Because,
okay.
right, because I can't have a vehicle in New Jersey. You can't have a vehicle sitting in your driveway. It
Especially
has
if
to
it's
be
under,
insured.
yeah.
They'll come and ticket you.
Mm.
They will crucify you for having a quote junk vehicle in the driveway without plates. So you have to keep insuring it and keep the registration current, unless you took it completely apart. But I'm not going to take apart the 17 kilowatt battery in my driveway. I just
Yeah, the
you might
average
not
price
see
that
me
I
next year.
calculated for that would be about 3,200 to about 4,100 for that battery, value wise, just the battery. So
Yeah,
that's somewhere in the realm of where it would be for just the materials itself for some
Yeah.
secondary market thing. So
right. I
in the
just don't know
future,
what.
if anybody else or if anybody knows, that's approximately where you would have for market price on those. So if you ever find out, or if you ever have somebody where your vehicle no longer works and you have something of that nature happen, always look into those things because
Yeah.
you have an asset on your hands, and those are things that you should definitely get your currency for.
I just didn't know where the secondary market is, so
It's hard to
it was easy
find.
to trade it in.
People, yeah, it's hard to find and people can't access it very easily, but it's
Mhm.
definitely something that exists. And even I have trouble with it because contacts rotate on a regular basis. But they exist, and you can sell your batteries to places like this, like Ally and other companies that are equivalent. It's just a matter of contacting them and making sure that they can have somebody come and pick it up.
Yeah. Next time, the next car will get old too, and at that point, if things wear out on it, it won't be the battery and it won't be the drivetrain. It will be all the other parts, bits and pieces, just like on any ICE vehicle. They fall apart.
Yep.
I
So,
can relate because my 2012 Mitsubishi NJEVA that I exported to Czechia, it
mhm.
still runs. I
Amen to
replaced the electric heater with the diesel heater in 2013, and that heater died. So I'm just going to replace it this summer when I travel to Czechia with another one.
Mhm.
Which is interesting project. But the battery, last year I was estimating it to be about at 80% state of health, meaning that it retains 80% capacity. It's hard to measure it for that vehicle because it doesn't tell me by itself. I have to do indirect method. But yeah, there is rust underneath. I had to actually had another service that was an error light, and we brought it to Poland to expert, and so all sorts of things. Not air conditioning. Air conditioning is working well, but and every time we travel to my hometown in Czechia, we use that vehicle. When we are not there, it is available to a friend of mine for pretty much 11 months a year. So that's my story with the Mitsubishi IMEF, which is my first electric vehicle, and it's still on the road.
Great.
Other questions?
I
We
think
do
that
not
might be
ha-
all. We can hit the reminders then, and we can keep it
Okay,
rolling.
let's go to the reminders. We have more shows coming up. The immediate one is this coming Saturday on May 18th. It is in Glen Ridge, and it's Arts and Eco Fair. Dennis Burzan is the captain. I'm not sure whether we have a link. No, we don't have the link. It is listed on Drive Electric Earth Month's portal that was linked previously. Technically, it is on National Drive Electric Week, but these two portals are interconnected. I also want to remind you that if you have an employer who is interested to provide workplace charging or any type of sustainable transportation features for you, that they should sign pledge at Charge at Work and to implement workplace charging and to get certified for free until October at evacertification.org. Also, I want to remind you and bring your phones and try to scan those QR codes. If you have Android or iPhone, this is the way how you can actually import New Jersey EVA calendar to your phone. And that way you can actually have in your phone all of our events. We strive to keep our calendar up to date. Sometimes we have events that are not ours, but we deem they are very important. So we post them in our calendar, but definitely we post our own events in our calendar, which is linked to our email address, which is newjerseyeva@gmail.com. And it is mirrored on our website at jerseyeva.org/events. So that's just about it, excuse me. And our next meeting, virtual meeting, will be just like this meeting. It's always second Tuesday of the month. And it will be on June 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Our invited speaker will be Paul Fan. He's the Director of Electric Vehicle Sales at Hunter Truck. I remember him, he brought Class 8 electric truck to Trenton Computer Festival in 2023. And I remember at that time, we were not able to have the vehicle on the upper deck because when the university fire marshals discovered it, they freaked out and they were afraid that the vehicle is too heavy to be located on the upper deck. So it's interesting anecdote. But it was a beast. So I think that is it. I thank you. And I'm going to stop recording right now. Wait a second here.